Westworld. We'll get into it in a
Yeah.
spoiler-ific fashion, as I mentioned earlier. So be warned if you're interested in Westworld and have not seen it all the way through. We're going to be talking about Westworld. We've talked pretty in depth about past Westworld, other seasons, what we've thought about them in general, and all that sort of thing. So
Yeah.
to me, the focus, like really the interesting story here, is how did how did the series manage to wrap up? How did series four go for, or season four go for us? And you know, I
Yeah.
guess we can start with, did everything make sense to you? Because it's been a while since we watched this. We watched this last
Gosh,
two
yeah.
episodes. How did you end up like picking it up? Were things making sense? All that sort of thing.
Yeah. I feel like on the whole, yes, things made sense, except for a little bit of the final episode. What is now the final episode. I mean, obviously they didn't
Okay.
intend it to be. Um, but yes, a little bit of the final episode in which Dolores is kind of memorializing the destruction of this world that Hale Loris created. And she's talking about, this world's dead, there's no sentient life, but there's one last opportunity, one last game for us to play. Maybe we can save ourselves. And I was sort of like, not quite following you, sister. Because it seems to discount the outliers here,
Mm,
unless I'm missing something. So I wasn't quite following like her, like, by this world, like nothing, no sentient life. And I was like, but outliers, are we not ever
yeah.
going to address them ever again? They were going to be a thing. And, we had
Well,
Clementine who was going to go find and live among them. Or is there a way that she was going to like weave that back in the next season? Now I'm just sort
n-
of like feeling a little stuck.
I think, I mean, the implication, and I think it's a little bit of a, I don't know. I didn't know that I bought this, because what we went with in the whole season was the brain control, the mind control stuff, which I thought was cool and well done. But then the final thing we get is, before the destruction of the tower or whatever, is, hey, thanks to William, kill everybody. Everybody kill each other. So then
Yes.
everybody's going mad and like is like just programmed to kill each other. And so I
Yeah.
think that was the idea, that everybody's just going to murder everyone. And right, this doesn't seem to affect the outliers,
Right.
but the other people were going to allegedly find them, right? Get a hold of them, kill them. So they must be counting on that, like humanity just finishing itself off,
Right.
which is a leap, I think.
Yeah, it was just a little too loose and not tied up for me. So
Sure.
I felt like that thread just kind of like dropped a bit away. Because a lot of the rest of it made sense. Like you said, like this whole season has been about mind control, like who's creating, who's game master of whatever particular world we're in. The final episodes got very, what is the body? Like, do we need a body? How attached are we to our bodies? Like, they don't do anything for us. Teddy got very, he followed a very like Descartes philosophy. I think, therefore I am. It's all about the mind and what you can do, and that makes you who you are. So I think those like overarching themes carried through very well. It just like these last bits felt a little like rushed and dropped, and like we were getting a means to an end. And I love, and now that we have spoilers up, I can say it. I love that we were like getting back to our origins, and we were going back to Westworld at the end. I was
Mm.
just hoping that's where we were ending up, and then we did. And then they ripped it away from me.
So, do we have any indication if this is how this season was intended to end, or if they altered things? Because it did feel like we jumped to some conclusions or we rushed a bit. Like, was that the way it was always meant to end in season 4? Or did they have
Right.
a heads up that, I feel like this came down the pipe pretty late. Like, hey, it's done.
Yeah.
It's canceled. I feel like this is what it was meant to be to this
I
point, but maybe
I feel like it mostly too, although I mean these last couple of episodes did feel a little like fire sale. Everybody's got to go and everybody's got to die.
yeah.
Um there was just like so much important character death that I was just like, boy, this isn't even like Game of Thrones where important characters die and you're like, I can't believe they actually killed a main character, but it's so impactful.
Yeah.
Here it was just like wanton death and destruction.
Yeah.
Um so it felt a little odd to have been, the choice all along.
Like they're clearing the
Um
slate.
yeah. Yeah, and it just didn't feel natural for everybody.
Yeah.
Um I kind of liked maybe that we were gonna I mean, the only one who really did feel not the only one. One of the main ones who did feel natural actually was, our guy on screen here, Man in Black, William. His storyline actually felt very like thought out to have him
Yeah.
killed.
Yep.
His storyline felt intentional and purposeful. Hale Loris also felt like a solid wrap up. um Maeve, Caleb, Bernard, even Stubbs did not.
Poor
I'm sorry. I'm like
Stubbs.
I'm like
Poor
throwing
Stubbs.
out all the names here, but we got
Yeah.
spoilers up, so
Mhm.
is what it is, yo. Yeah, just yeah, people felt robbed of their endings here. And I don't know, I was thinking about particularly the fact that Dolores, like OG Dolores is now, connected to this world and the Sublime. And the people who are in there, there's obviously people who could be brought back in a different way. Like Maeve
Yeah.
says, I'm not really here, am I? I'm in the Sublime. So, we could
Right.
get some
Yeah,
of those
yeah.
characters back in interesting ways, but yeah, it just felt very you know, like you said, we're just wiping the slate clean and everybody's gotta go.
Yeah. Well, yeah. It I think the
That
show
was
also
that was the
stump
lesser part that I just didn't enjoy about these last 2 episodes. I
right.
was just like, it's a lot happening right now.
Mhm. Yeah, I would like the answer. Hopefully we'll know it at some point if they changed something or this is what they meant to do. And obviously that can you can reshape what you think of something depending on how it goes forward. We saw
Right,
that with Raised by Wolves at the end of season 1. We're like, "Whoa, what is happening here?" And then season 2 explains it makes sense and it goes forward from there. So without the next thing, I guess we won't know if this
right.
really feels right. Because right now, yeah, it doesn't. It does feel rushed. Does feel like wiping the slate clean. It does feel like they tried to tackle again the larger picture too
Yep.
much because they didn't manage it. There was, okay, so what we basically see is this one city. Okay, now the rest of the world is going to be devoid of life. Like,
Mhm.
that was a question we had earlier. Does this one tower affect the entire world? They seem to talk about
Right,
this city, so what is it like on the rest of the planet? Are there multiple towers? Kale wouldn't be running all that. This seems so like where are we scope wise? Or are they suggesting that we've gotten to some point in the future where everyone else was already wiped out
right,
and
and this
this is
city
what
was
was
it.
left or something,
Yep.
It's like we're
Which
completely bending what reality. I don't know.
right, which seems at odds with what we understand of the outside human world in the first season of Westworld.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Like, this would suggest some sort of, like, global apocalyptic event which,
Yeah.
left humans with only one city to dwell in, whereas, like, the season 1 of Westworld suggests that humans are so, like, overpopulated and bored and wealthy in their original world, they had to start creating these, like, theme parks to escape to, which
Hmm.
suggests to me expansion of the human race rather than diminish. So, like, did we miss some sort of like apocalyptic trigger somewhere? Or,
Yeah.
like you said, is this really like confined to Haloris's world? Is it confined to one city of a still populated human race or a still populated human planet on Earth? And she only controls a piece of it, but somehow we're expected to believe that like this is the only piece that matters and like bye
Right.
everybody.
So, I mean, I guess that's the question. Do we miss some sort of time thing? Because obviously it's revealed that like the world we're seeing, we've been kind of seeing through Dolores's eyes, whatever her new name is, because she's not
Christina, yeah.
even there, Christina, and it's
Right.
just facades to what used to be New York. And so when that goes away, we see, the decay and destruction there. So is that
Right.
like just recent, or did we skip some sort of massive time thing, and this is
Right.
what's left, I don't know. Maybe
I
that's
mean,
maybe that's the big reveal of the would be the big reveal of the next season. Like, yeah, this really
right.
was, you know.
Which would make sense because of what we know about Caleb here shown on screen, his daughter Frankie and her like cohort of outliers. Like if they're living in the real world and it does seem to be they're in like some sort of desert with like ruins and remains of certain things and like it just feels very barren and empty. Was there sort of some sort of like apocalyptic event that we just like missed happening? I mean, I know we obviously the prior season had the destruction of Rehoboam and that whole
Yeah.
like scheme and plan for the human world absolutely falling apart, but we didn't really get to see the like all world effects of that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like we didn't travel
Right.
to different locations around the world and be like, "Oh, oh, okay, like everybody's getting hit by this." It again was like this one city is potentially meant to be representative of the entire world, but we don't know.
Yeah. I mean, Maeve was buried in the sand. Like we did have
Right.
that time passage, but that's basically like
Bernard was like
Frankie
dusty
growing
and
up,
whatever. Yeah.
child to adult or something like that.
Yep.
But we did kind of get introduced to this where, you know, so yeah, this would have had to be a destruction in the time from Frankie being a child to Frankie being an adult.
Right.
Not that long a time, but possible where, and then the time that, Halorus gets all his setup, this whole control mechanism and all that. So I don't know, it's an interesting thing to play with, or like maybe
Right.
making this make more sense.
Right.
So, hmm. Um, let's see what else. I felt like obviously the difficult thing with a show like this is you pose lots of interesting philosophical questions. You
Yeah.
have to choose where you want to seemingly answer them and where you want to like not, and like what characters want to represent what and whatever. I felt from these two episodes in particular, like trying to answer a few things, and that answer seemed to be pretty cynical of the human race in general. Like, yeah, it was every, Bernard saw it. Every iteration, it's done. Every version, it's over. Um,
Man in
and
Black, we're here for destruction. That's all.
yeah,
That's all we do. Yeah.
so that seemed to be the kind of conclusion we were given, or the show was seeming to state. Do you kind of agree with that, or?
Yeah, I would. It was very like mankind's whatever it does and whatever we do since we are reflections of our creators is destroy. Like it's hopeless.
Mhm.
It's just I don't know. We
Yeah.
can't evolve, we can't like break the cycle and yet we keep trying to like in different ways. Halores had her own way of creating of trying to break the cycle and like the Man in Black slash William, his answer was just like, well, we're all doomed, so we might as well wipe the slate clean. But he never really got to the part of like, well, what happens after you wipe the slate clean? Is it just
Mhm.
nothing? Or does somebody else come in and have like a vision? Or is it you know what I mean? Like there just wasn't like a
Yeah.
a next step beyond like everything will be destroyed by
Mhm.
our own hands.
How do you I mean, how do you feel about that? Like, we kinda know what the show thinks about it or is suggesting anyways, but
Right. I mean, I certainly think that humanity has repeating cycles. You know what I mean? Like there we aren't I disagree in the sense of like we aren't just destroyers because in order to destroy there has to be something to be created first. Do you know what I mean? So there
sure.
are cycles of building and creation and invention before there's cycles of destruction. So I
Well, it can
just
be
I don't
destroying things that we didn't create.
I mean, I guess, but like, and that's very existential of us because that would be like very, it would be very meta to be like, well, the world, the natural earth created things and humanity destroys them, which I don't necessarily disagree with, in certain instances, but I just think it's too simplistic of a view to just say humanity is destruction and that's it.
Yeah.
Like there like I said, there are cycles and there are certain people who have inclination towards that, and I just don't think you can put that on everybody you meet. I
Yeah.
don't think you can put that on humanity as a whole.
It's, um, like, a lot of times when I listen to people, they're sort of talking about the idea of, like, the way that we, you know, are successful is if we believe in a sort of a higher power and that sort of aligns our goals and it creates our north star in a way. And if you don't have that, then you start aligning in weird ways. And your north star, it gets all messed up, and are be more prone to nihilism or some sort of destruction. But at the same time, if you think of that kind of thing, where that is making us sort of special. And like, though I agree we are special, we're also still animals. You know, are frogs, all frogs do, all they do is destroy. If the world was
Right.
left to the vices of frogs, would everything be destroyed? Like, or how about the deer or the whales? Like, somehow often we get set on the outside of an ecosystem. Like and I understand it. Like, we have more control and more awareness than these other things, but we are still those things. We are still the frog and the gorilla and the horse, even though like we have awareness. So like, how much does that separate us
Yeah.
that would then allow us to be something that is like essentially not designed to exist coherently with the world in which we exist? Because in my mind, something that exists is there's nothing inherently evil nor good about it existing. It just does. And humans are that too. And so we're not like
Sure.
all out destroyers and we're not all benevolent or whatever. We just are. And being we're a conscious, we should do the best at being, at the best that we can at existing.
Sure. I mean, I think I was just thinking about uh comparing us to like we're the frogs or we're the whales or we're the deer, whatever we are. I mean, in thinking about that, I was thinking about like what disrupts an ecosystem and like what kind of animals like survive, cohabitate, balance well in an ecosystem. And there are invasive species. So I mean, I guess this show could be kind of an argument for are humans an invasive species? You know what I mean? Like
But
that do come in and destroy the habitat, the environment, the ecosystem. I'm
but
not
that's
saying we are, I'm
all
just like
right.
positing.
Right. And I like that, but that's all based on
Sure.
perspective. The invasive species doesn't feel invasive. It's just trying to survive. It's just living, it's
Right,
just doing what it does.
but that
That
doesn't mean
now
it
that
doesn't
might
destroy.
right,
And
right,
by the
but it's
same token,
also
like
yes, but at the same token creates, it pushes other things out for itself and for more of itself, and it's unaware that it's doing it, but it does, and it does naturally. And so we
right,
can be aware when we do it because we can be aware,
right,
but it doesn't make it unnatural to do it. It doesn't make it unnatural that that occurs because it does occur. And then we try to
right.
do maybe the more unnatural thing and adjust that. Our society is filled with like kind of puppeteering ecosystems everywhere,
Sure.
stocking fish here, counting the deer population there, like this invasive species here. Don't let that spread. Don't spread it, don't like whatever. It's always kind of puppeteering these different things that sort of, if we're so unnatural, we're messing with the natural order of things. But I don't view us
But
as
maybe
unnatural. We're
sure, but
just
maybe
part of it.
part of the point of our awareness is to, like, be like, we do some things that are unnatural. We're the invasive species that's been, like I don't know. I mean, if you just think about this as like one grand experiment, like what if we're the invasive species who's been given awareness and it's just like, let's see what they do. Like,
Hmm.
you know what I mean? Like they're invasive and they're potentially destroying this like larger worldwide ecosystem, but they have the awareness to say like we're doing things that are destructive. Can we stop ourselves?
Well, I mean, and that's
I mean,
definitely like,
it's like a cool real world experiment. I mean, not cool in the sense of like, I want our planet to die, and if we can't like rein it in, not necessarily saying like our actions are sole contributors, but if they are, like, you know, the end of the experiment is destruction. But just positing again, like
I
it's
still,
an
well,
interesting question to think about.
yeah, two parts of that. One, it
Sure,
hinges on the idea that we have a creator. So, because the argument all comes from like you have to come at it from different ways for sure. Whether you're coming at it from a perspective
sure,
of we have a
sure.
creator and potentially a purpose, like a divined purpose, or if we um or if it's just happenstance, if it's just life and life is what it is. um and then the other part is the destruction again, though nothing is really ever destroyed, is changed, so like the destruction again is from like so you might destroy a thing, but all its pieces still exist, it's just in a different form. you know if you burn something, you don't get rid of it, you just deconstruct it, you just change it, you've rearranged the atoms, it all still exists. No matter leaves the earth unless we blast it out of our atmosphere. It all still is there.
Sure.
So destruction of the earth is subjective in a sense that like it's like, well, if my forest here is destroyed, is gone, then I see that forest no longer there. It's been destroyed. But the earth, that didn't hurt the earth. The earth doesn't
But
have
what if it did?
feelings.
Well, no, it doesn't have feelings, but like, what if now it's been destroyed to a point where nothing else can grow there or be built there because the like Earth itself is no longer like able to it's no longer fertile, and then B it's like unstable enough that you can't build there either. Do you know what I'm trying to say? So like
Yeah.
yes, and
Yeah, right. I just always kind of come from the, again, it's sort of a weird non-religious perspective that like Mars doesn't care if it can't grow things right now. Like it's
no.
Mars exists as it is and it's not destroyed. It is Mars and it's how we know Mars to have been. Now, you know, 14 billion years ago, maybe it was different. It had an
Yeah.
ecosystem, it had something else or whatever. And Mars doesn't care. And we don't think about Mars as like it's destroyed. In fact, some people want to go to live on Mars, you know, but it's just like again, I'm just kind of saying destruction at to a point is perspective unless you're talking about the technical deconstruction of something,
Sure.
but then you are destroying what that thing was, but what it was made of still exists.
Hmm.
Just yeah.
Yeah, and I don't think I mean, the question of destruction should just necessarily be posed of like the earth doesn't care if it's destroyed. Well, no, it doesn't. But should we care
Right.
if the earth is destroyed? I mean, apparently for our own survival we should.
Right. Yep.
So yeah, so it's still subjective for sure.
Yep. I don't know. It's the things are weird. Again, they're odd to talk about when you're not. I'm not sure which way I always want to discuss it. Whether it's from like a religious sort of theological sort of perspective, or what becomes very like, I don't know, cold in a way of sort of
Yeah.
an atheistic perspective. So,
Well, and I feel like
um,
sometimes this show in particular doesn't really know either what angle it wants to take. I think there's a little bit of grab bag of everything. I mean,
mhm,
I mentioned earlier like Teddy comes up with a very I think therefore I am philosophy, which is, Rene Descartes. Um and then like but the whole last episode of this season kind of focuses on like who's the creator of the world that we're living in. Hale Loris is like, I created this world, and then William's like, it's my world now. Now I'm the creator, and now,
yeah,
we have Christina coming in and being like, I'm gonna organize and be the creator of one last game, and it's like, well, we
yeah,
could approach it in the sense of like, applying it to our own us, the viewer reality of like who's the architect of our game. Is there
yeah.
some sort of like creator floating out there somewhere, and who might that be? So yeah, so I think Westworld does usually a nice mix of kind of different philosophical, religious, moral questions. And in that regard, these episodes aren't any different in terms of like kind of reaching out for different aspects and pulling them in and kind of seeing what you think.
But that's why I was kind of surprised that it ended up feeling a little cynical. Like I said, it
Yeah.
kind of felt
Yeah.
like it decided a little bit when I feel like
Yeah.
it often hasn't. So,
Well, and that's where it would have been nice to have a next season because we end with Christina Dolores being like, there's one last game, survival or destroy. I don't think she says survival. I think she says something. It's not like savior, but it's along those lines. Do you know what I mean? It's not just survival. It's a little bit
yeah,
more than that. I can't think of the word right now. Or destruction. And she's just like, let's see what we can do to save ourselves. And it's like, well, what was that gonna be then?
right.
Was it gonna be
Yeah,
less cynical?
yeah.
Westworld's never been, like, floating along on, like, bubbles of hope or whatever,
No.
but like you said, it hasn't been this, like, conclusively, "What's the point? It's meaningless because we're destroyers, and we should all just, like, apocalypse now this bad boy,"
Yeah.
as
Yeah.
in William's vision, which I
Yeah,
have to
the
say it came on a little strong. That was definitely a plot point for me that I was like, "This is a lot right now."
wait,
Where,
Williams'
like
vision?
yeah, the host man in black, where suddenly he has one conversation with human
Oh.
William, and he's like, "Renegade! Blow it all up! Tear it all down!" And I was like, "Okay." Like,
Mhm.
you just need to maybe take a beat, dude, because you were like Halloris's little puppet, and I get that you were, like, starting to fracture and see your own things, but suddenly you're just, like, full on, like, "I am human William, and I'm gonna do what he did, and, like, let's just burn it to the ground." It was a lot for me to have that switch go.
That's true. I do think though that sometimes people that are grasping for meaning, purpose, direction, importance, whatever, when they find an inkling of it, they go all in. It's kinda like a born again thing or something. Like you're a low point or whatever, you're not sure what to think. As soon as you find that bit of hope or the something that makes stuff make sense,
Yeah.
you kind of decide you have to go all in or not.
I guess I just was sort of like more interested in his potential kind of feeling out of the outsiders and like how or the outliers and how intrigued he was by them and like what was happening and like all the cracks and fractures in the world. I just thought that was a more interesting place to go than like
Sure. Yeah.
Men in Black is right. I'm gonna kill him and do what he wants and live out his
Yeah.
legacy. I don't know. It's just a little like bleh.
Yeah. I still worry that if we had gotten the next season, that we wouldn't have the conclusion we want anyways, because it's part of the problem with dealing with things that are so big like this is how do you wrap this up logically, you know?
Going back small. Westworld. We were there.
Right, but they
Microcosm within
open
the
the door,
microcosm.
and that makes sense for a season, but then you still have to answer the larger questions because they brought
Right.
it to
But
the bigger
but
space.
maybe they could in the microcosm. Do you know what I mean?
Maybe.
Like I think taking it back in a manageable scope would have helped them focus on the questions.
Mhm.
And now we're never
Yeah,
gonna get
maybe. Maybe. I worry that they have a direction and not an end. Like they wouldn't know. It's kind of like the maze, right? The design of the maze. That was like a really cool setup. When William first found that under the
yeah,
guy's scalp, I'm like, whoa, what is going on? And we see this pattern again. And what is this? And it really was like a map to consciousness, a map to awareness, sort of in a way.
right.
But, like, was that really satisfying exactly? I don't know. I feel like it's gonna be
It
I just
was,
think
I
they
thought.
gave themselves almost an impossible task. It's like The Matrix. Everybody rags on the follow-up Matrix movies, but I want someone to tell me how they would have ended it instead,
Right.
you know?
Yeah, I mean, this way it's very like, Schrodinger's cat. The cat, as long as you don't look inside the box, the cat is alive or dead, depending
Yeah.
on your belief. And as long as we don't have a season 5, we can believe
Yeah.
or not believe that they would have wrapped it up in a satisfying
Yeah.
fashion because we'll never
Right.
know.
Yeah.
But
Hmm. I mean,
I
they deserve the cancellation because season 3 was so bad. And then no
don't
one
bring
came
me
back for season
back.
4. But 4, yeah, 4 was, you know, we we can talk about that. Like overall, season 4, like other than kind of the end here, which maybe would have been corrected in some fashion by how season 5 started.
Right,
I really enjoyed my time in season 4 here. I thought the
right,
music was great. I thought that they did go smaller scale on some things. We focused on some characters a little better. We like made some characters that we really gave weird paths to in season 3. We kind of course corrected for them. Bernard felt more like Bernard again finally.
yep.
Um they
Caleb
really
was
sort of
interesting.
yeah, was a
Thank
huge
you.
change. Mhm. A lot of things that all of a sudden we got some interesting concepts brought up, some shocking moments, some surprises, the whole reveal that, I mean, just that Teddy's back and then that, Dolores can control this world. And how is that
Right.
happening to
And he's
like,
back, but he's not back.
yeah, yeah,
But he is back because now she's in the Sublime and she can go find him.
yeah. So,
Ugh,
like, they did a lot to course correct their horrible mistakes in 3, and it ultimately was really enjoyable to watch, I thought. And
yeah,
these last 2 episodes probably would have been a little more manageable had we kept watching right through, you know? We didn't have the
right.
moments of kind of catch up where are we at here. But, yeah. Do you have overall thoughts or other things that happened that really, kinda stood out or didn't make sense or
Um, yeah, I just, I was I feel like this season really brought like you said, brought the show back in a satisfying way, and there were several character story arcs that I was, like, happy to see wrapped up, like Halores, who's on the screen right now. I felt like her death was like, "This is good, this is satisfying, I've taken you as far as I want you to go, and I'm good with you, just, like, you had your fun, you had your, like, I'm gonna wreak destruction, whoops, now I'm bored, what am I gonna do?" Try to, like, force everybody to ascend to a new level of consciousness, but, like, nobody likes that, so bye. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
She was like, her whole story arc was interesting and awesome, and Tessa Thompson did a great job, killed it in the acting department, but she was such a contradiction, like, Hale was always talking about, like, ascending, next level, leave our bodies behind, why are we so attached to them? Yet she could never actually let go of her own body. Even in the final battle with William, she was like, "Leave my scars, I wanna remember, leave my face, I want him to know it was me."
Yeah.
So, she was just such a contradiction, like, she never could have, like, achieved what she wanted to do, so her ending here and, like, taking out the Man in Black, kind of in host form and inadvertently in human indirectly, I guess, in human form, that all felt like it worked out, and I was ready to see where we could go next.
Sure.
So,
The question I have to like the was sitting with me yet after this was the whole purpose of a body and stuff, because like you were just talking about how her goal is to get people to
yeah,
transcend, to get the host to transcend, and some people would do it but she was hesitant herself and all this stuff. um you know I was thinking about it quite a bit after the show, and my thought was there's no point if without a physical space. I've always thought about this where like you can, okay, we'll upload our minds, we'll digitize them to the computer, they'll live in the net, we'll live on forever because your consciousness is
plugged in.
preserved. Yeah. And then you don't need a body. And your body is the slave for your soul anyways. So like what's the point? But the more I think about it now, like we have no meaning. We have no meaning to exist without the tie to the physical space. Like we only have any meaning because our physical forms will end. And so
Uh-huh.
everything only gains importance because it can end. If you can live on forever, if everything you want can persist forever, nothing has any meaning at all. And so there
Well, that
literally is
isn't
no point.
isn't that the point of vampire movies? To, like,
Yeah, but
say when
they
you're
even
immortal?
they can die, but right,
They
even they can
can,
die, and
like,
they still
you could
interact with the real world. The things
you
in
could
life
still
die
die.
in front of them.
You could still die if you uploaded your consciousness to the net, like, some sort of power system could fail.
Sure. Yes. Yes. It's one of those things where you could live in perpetuity should nothing, like go wrong. Like
Same
with
same as with
life,
vampires or elves in Tolkien's world, if in perpetuity happens if nothing goes horrendously wrong.
to me, that's always like the point of that is to appreciate what you have in front of you because it will
Yeah,
go away, you know, versus like having any meaning at all in this kind of thing. But yes, I get what you're saying is a similar kind of
because
idea.
often, like, vampire movies, I feel like, have that sort of, like, existential, like, I'm searching for meaning because
Hmm.
things have lost meaning, and it's usually, like, a human who, like, brings it back because it's like,
Yep.
"Oh, your fleeting life is so interesting to me."
Hmm.
But, yeah,
But
so it's,
how
like,
much
very
more is that
it's
if like nothing around you is real?
but, like, that was the interesting part about this was, like, Halores built these, like sorry. Ugh. Halores built these, like, random, formless, weird bodies to put their orbs into still. I mean, they were not
Yeah.
distinct or unique from one another. They were just, like, these white armless shells with black legs, which what the crap? The design was just like, "I'm so lost here as
It
to how
was,
this could be, like, ascension." But there was still, like, a physical space for their pearl, their orb, their core, whatever, to exist, and they still look like things that were maybe gonna be walking around. So, like, they would still have physical form, just not unique. So that was a plot point that I was like, I'm not quite I'm not quite here for if you don't need a body, what is this then? You know what I mean? Like, it just
yeah,
didn't quite make sense to
yeah.
me.
I thought it was I guess I saw it as some part of the transition or whatever because we didn't see those guys, like, walking around then, you
We
know?
didn't know,
They
but because that was because we her transition or her ascension was interrupted.
hmm. But other people have ascended. We see other people do it and they kinda, like, just then, like, their body just goes out, the pearl gets taken out, you know? I don't
Yeah.
kn yeah, it's a good question. I don't know. I don't remember enough earlier in the season because I thought they were all going to, this other space. Just like where we have, the real Teddy and all that, whatever space that is. We have this other space.
Sublime.
Yeah. So we have this
Well, they
other
couldn't
one now for these hosts.
right. Right, 'cause well, they couldn't get into the Sublime, remember,
Right.
because Halores kept it safe but couldn't access it. Only
Yes.
Bernard, Maeve, and Dolores could.
Right. Hmm.
So yeah,
Yeah,
that
that's a good
that just wasn't
question.
that wasn't quite, like, wrapped up, I think, in a really satisfying but yeah, I mean, it's interesting because, again, philosophically, it's interesting to think about, like, what impact does your body have? Like, obviously, we're attached to our bodies because they give us some sort of definition of self, both in this is what I look like, this is how I understand who I am, this is how I interact with a physical world and make meaning and understanding with a physical world. This physical shell houses my mind, my soul, if that's part of your philosophy, my being, my essence, whatever you want to call that sort of like spark. Um, so that's always going to be an intrinsic part, I think, of our definition of like who you are.
Mhm.
So yeah. I mean this season did question like the need for a body, but ultimately nobody could kind of evolve beyond having some attachment to their body, to their look, to their
Mhm.
physical self.
Yep.
Um, and I think the show very smartly kept repeating, like these hosts are only reflections of their creators. So they're no matter what they do, they still have some sort of like human traits because they were created by humans that they can't quite let go of, no
Yeah.
matter how desperately they try.
Yeah. It the other reason I wonder if maybe, you know, season 5 was canceled and stuff is because the way I see where it's going is basically The Matrix. Um, we have a whole it's because the only thing if you're gonna have meaning in digital space or whatever, I feel like they would play with the idea that you have people like we could be in a space that is not real. Like we could be hosts and we wouldn't know it because we're in the program, we're in the thing, we're just like the Matrix, we're in the machine or whatever. And so
Right.
the test is how are you going to manage it in their case calling a game or in this simulation or whatever. Are you going to break free and find out what the real world is? Because as soon as you do that, you're you're back to square one. You're only
Right.
satisfied with the lie when you don't know it's a lie. As soon as you do, you need more. And so I feel like that's what they would play with more in the next season. And it's not that that hasn't been done. It's we kind of get that in the sense from in the first season, we're kind of playing with the idea. And then of course with the Matrix and then stuff like Elon Musk has put forward or whatever, like we're living in a simulation, that sort of thing. So not that I'd be opposed to seeing more of that. I'm interested in that kind of thing, but
Right.
you know, yeah. Um,
Ugh,
let's see.
the
I mean,
perils of not knowing.
yeah, I know. I hope they have released something sometime. You know, some
Right.
cast or I mean, not that they're reliable necessarily, but the showrunners or whoever does some interviews, or maybe there's a book written that's kind of
Sure.
like the the blueprint that was for season
Right.
5. You
Right.
know,
Somebody somewhere along the line of like
yeah,
what ideas we had. Yeah,
it'd be
it'd be
cool to
nice.
know. Yeah, because we get this show gave us a lot of entertainment. You know, for all the hiccups and stuff. It also gave us a lot of entertainment, and yeah. So,
Yeah.
um, well, anything else you need to be said about Westworld?
No, just another show I do feel gone just a bit too soon.
Okay.
Like Raised by
Yeah.
Wolves. I mean, it's not as bitter. It's not as out of nowhere. Well, actually it is because this was more successful than Raised by Wolves. So I did feel like a little like, whoa, like this was just such a
Sure.
flagship show there for a bit, and I know it kind of flagged a little, it sunk a little bit, but I just didn't
Yeah.
quite think it was enough to get the axe.
Yep. Andrea, you see, you're actually in a host body. It's just not lasting very long. They just don't take, you know. I'm sorry to break the news to you, unfortunately, you know. Yeah, you're starting to
Got the
shake.
trembles. Yep.
Yeah. All right.